we can't talk about gun violence without talking about mental health, without talking about women's
Hmm.
rights, without talking about LGBTQ plus rights, right? So
It's
they're
all intertwined.
exactly right. So they're all in a web, right? And we, even the things that I worked on, more briefly, think like, like climate advocacy, right? We can't talk about climate advocacy without talking about the future that we want, which is inherently intertwined with things like gender justice. So
Yeah.
they all kind of come together. So that's more of the thematic, right, in the issue area. But in terms of like the ethos for me, there were all issues that I felt personally compelled to talk about, to advocate around. And I'm incredibly fortunate to be in community with other young people that felt the same.
That was this week's guest, Arielle Geismar. Arielle is a 23-year-old based in Washington, D.C., and has been an advocate for young people since she was in high school. She's now focused on tech ethics and making online spaces safe for young people, both through her personal advocacy and her work as co chair of Design It For Us. She's been recognized by Forbes as a 30 under 30 for her work in the space and has had the opportunity to work with brands like Nike and Patagonia, as well as advising the Biden Harris transition team on the issue. In our conversation, Arielle and I discuss the advice that she wishes that she would have had at the beginning of her journey in advocacy. I don't think anything can prepare you for the world that Arielle has created for herself, but I think anyone looking to make an impact will find her story inspiring. I'm Kyle Cuzimore, and this is I Don't Know About You. Hi, Arielle. Thanks so much for joining me on I Don't Know About You.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So let's give everyone some background context. So I've worked with you before, but let's give the audience just a little bit of background on who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Cool. My name is Arielle Geismar. I'm a youth advocate, and my background is in advocating for bills for young people all across the country to build collective power, both on and offline. I'm originally from New York City, and I started, doing advocacy when I was 16, and I found myself splashed across national news for organizing walkouts in New York City. And from there, just started doing work in, women's rights, mental health, all these different things that I'm really passionate about. I'm currently an advocate in Washington, D.C. I'm a college graduate, which is exciting.
Nice.
And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. So thinking back, not even when you were in high school, but even before that, did you have any idea that like this is like where you'd end up? Like after all the organizing and all the everything, did you know that this is like where you'd be?
Absolutely not. I don't think I knew what I was gonna be. I was like, yeah, I'm just like kind of in the universe. I was like doing Model UN at the time. So I was interested in the world in this way.
For sure. So every single episode, I ask every guest the same question. So if you could look back to the start of your journey, what advice would you give yourself? So I would love to hear like what your advice would be.
The start of my journey, what advice I would give to myself. Ooh. I think just starting with like, you are about to go on the wildest journey, and it is going to feel really unfamiliar, and it's going to feel really weird and bizarre, and then it's going to be really impactful. I think there was absolutely no way for me at the beginning to tell myself what I would be doing now. And I would just, tell myself, sit back, try to, do the best with it as you can, um, and just go from there. It's going to feel terrible, and then you're going to know what to do with it. And what I mean by that is you're going to be 16, you're going to be in the middle of one of the most, hot button issues in American politics. And you are going to feel the weight of the world, and you will have no idea what to do. It's going to feel terrible. And then you will learn, you will grow, and then you will know exactly what to do with it and
Uh,
make a life and a not just a career, but like a vision of something that you care about so deeply, and you will only be able to know what to do with it once you've felt terrible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you are so much more capable than you think. Throughout your experiences, you will have people telling you that you are too young, that you're too inexperienced. You don't have to be a certain age to understand right and wrong. You don't have to be a certain age to advocate for what you believe in. So you are on the path that you're meant to be on, and you are so much more capable than you believe in yourself for. And the third is that you are actually in the driver's seat of your life. You can make your life very, very beautiful. It's something that I'm doing now, right? It's 23. I look back at, my 16-year-old self, and I think she had this vision for what she wanted life to be. And I think she just didn't know how to get there. And I think at points didn't believe that she even could get there. And now that I'm not saying that I'm here, but I'm on my way to being there, you can do it. I mean, you're so capable.
That's like so inspiring. I think like especially like in times right now, like anyone doing like the good work, advocacy work, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of hard. I'm just going to be honest. Like right now is like a tough time, but I had a guest a couple weeks ago come on and we talked about he worked in the climate space and he was like, yeah, obviously right now is a really tough time for climate, but there are still things that we individually can do and we can like take control of our own, existence within this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, right? And like, I mean, even with my journey, right? I started in gun violence prevention when I was still in high school. I passed a law around gun violence prevention and domestic violence, and from there, I was working in women's rights and LGBTQ plus rights. I graduated high school and I took a gap year to work full time on Capitol Hill. That
Mm,
was 2019 to 2020. That feels like a very different world that we're in now, and
totally.
even through then, right, I was learning, right, like there are all these things, both like in Washington, D.C., but just in your life that you're going to have to kind of scrape together. And sometimes it'll be prettier than other times. Um, but even, the field that I work in now, right, which is responsible technology, right, like tech ethics, getting to the bottom of, social media and emerging technologies and their impact on young people, um, feels bleak, totally feels bleak. And
Yeah,
part of doing that is having the passion for it and not just working against something, but working towards something.
100%. On the topic of tech ethics, I'd love to hear like how you really got started with this is like a real passion area. Like how did you develop an interest and like what did it look like at the very beginning?
Yeah, for sure. So I was doing all this organizing work as a teenager online, right? I was using social media. Hey y'all, I'm on the hill today. This
Right,
is what I'm
right.
doing. This is what I'm passionate about. And I was starting to notice this relationship between what happens online and offline. And around the same time this happened, I lost a very close friend to suicide. And I was like, that's it. Like it's mental health from here on out. Like that's what I'm doing. And I noticed the relationship between mental health, well-being, and our online world. So in 2020, I started doing advocacy and just learning about like what happens online, what are young people's experiences online, and from there, just completely snowballed, as you can imagine. Like it, the things that I learned is like, young people are struggling online. We have a diverse set of experiences online. We also like being online, right? Like I
Yeah,
love talking about issues that matter to me. I love talking about you know things that are current, reading news online. It's not to say that the online world is bad, but over the past years, I've noticed and grown and advocated to make it better. So I'm currently the co-chair of Design It For Us, which is a youth-led nonprofit fighting for a more equitable digital world and to take on big tech and to address, some of these concerns that we have about technology.
I think the work that you're doing at Design for Us is super interesting, and I definitely want to jump into that in just a little bit. Thinking also about at the very beginning, so with organizing, like, which feels like it was like a separate era, like when you got into like organizing around like gun violence. What did like the start of that look like?
Yeah, I led walkouts in New York City, and I led, thousands and thousands of my peers from New York City public schools and private schools to walk out in protest of inaction on gun violence, right? We started as this generation that was the lockdown generation, right? We went into school, into our communities, into our households, knowing that we were under the threat of gun violence. So we started organizing around that. We got a coalition of young people together to start working on this on a state level. And then from there, we realized this is not just a state level issue, but this is a federal issue, right? So during my gap year, we were advocating for, bans on things like bump stocks, which are, tools that you can put on a weapon to make it more automatic, right? We were advocating for community bills, right? To resource our communities who need it the most. And so at the core, at every single one of these stages, it's just a group of young people doing things that we just really cared about. That's it.
Like, it's also just like, wow, what a different, like, I'm just sitting over here like, wow, 2019 was such a different time also.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think is like really interesting is you've had a lot of different focus areas, and you mentioned kind of why mental health has kind of like taken the spotlight. But what do you think the through line between all the different things that you've like worked on has been?
Hmm. I think the through line is that they are all issues that young people care about, and they're all issues that matter to me personally. I'll break that into two different sections, right? Which is that there are, through lines in terms of the issues, right? We can't talk about gun violence without talking about mental health, without talking about women's
Mm-hmm.
rights, without talking about LGBTQ plus rights, right? So
It's
they're
all intertwined.
exactly right. So they're all in a web, right? And we, even the things that I worked on, more briefly, think like, like climate advocacy, right? We can't talk about climate advocacy without talking about the future that we want, which is inherently intertwined with things like gender justice. So
Yeah.
they all kind of come together. So that's more of the thematic, right, in the issue area. But in terms of like the ethos for me, there were all issues that I felt personally compelled to talk about, to advocate around. And I'm incredibly fortunate to be in community with other young people that felt the same way. Right. And I think what we've seen since 2019 is this complete blossom of youth advocacy in our age, which is that young people see what's wrong. We see the world that we've been handed, and we're upset about it. Like, we're really, really frustrated with the issues that we're inheriting, and we're deciding that we're going to come together and start collaborating on it. So it's not just about, some of these issues have to do with one another, but that young people such as myself have seen an opportunity to come together and do something about it.
100%. I liked how you tied it in also with like just our generation because a couple episodes ago when I was speaking to Wyatt Williams, he works for New York Climate Exchange and does a bunch of things around like climate transformation and like how economics and culture like kind of all intertwine with it. Like it is like our generation like did inherit like just so many issues, but we are the ones that are going to be able to fix it. I think like we're the ones that are fired up enough to actually create change here. Tying it back to like one of your pieces of advice, what do you think some of the earliest moments in your advocacy work that you accomplished way more than what you thought was possible, or people doubted like you were going to be able to accomplish something? What were some of those early moments that you really like did more? You know?
Hmm. So I'll talk about, this big walkout that I led in New York City, which was that, people were organizing walkouts all around the country, frankly, all around the world. And, as someone who was heading up the New York City set of walkouts, I knew that it was going to be big. And I was in conversation with someone at the New York City Parks Department, right? So, like the office that
Yeah.
handles the permits. And our rally was held in Washington Square Park. And there's a tiny area in the offshoot of Washington Square Park that can hold like 1,500 people. And, we submitted our permit for like the Washington Arch, right? We were only allowed that tiny little square on the side.
Oh
And I was
wow.
like, this is going to be a problem, right? Like,
Yeah. It just
I
isn't going to work.
right, like this will not work. We have a stage, we have, like speaking, like we have
Yeah.
speakers. Um, this is not going to work. And so I went to the permit office and I asked to speak to whoever was in charge because they weren't writing me back on my email. And this person kind of like sat me down. They're like, hey, like you're young and I really understand, like you have so much passion, but like this arch is really reserved for like the big things. And I was like, this is going to be a big thing. I'm telling you, it's going to be a big thing. And I actually decided to stay in the New York City permit office until
Oh
I
my
got the
gosh.
permit that I wanted. And I'm sure by the end of the day, he was like, I'm so tired. I just want to go home. But we got the permit. And that was kind of one of the big risks, right? I was like, I kind of put myself out there. I did not know what I was doing. And we got the Washington Arch. and people showed up, right? People showed out, and it was, this huge thing. And I think that was a moment in time where I was like, okay, like I can do this. I think another point, and a huge point in my life in terms of my advocacy and my life path, was when I decided to take a gap year. And I was 17 years old. So I'm 17. I'm about to graduate high school. And I have this idea, which is that I should work full time in DC and just advocate for the things that I care about and show up on, you know, our
Yeah.
nation's capital and talk about these things. And no one in my life was doing that. Like, that was not a life path that was drawn out for me in high school.
It's still like not talked about. Like, I mean, because we graduated around the same time, but like not hardly anyone that like I knew like was taking a gap year. Um, I told myself I was taking a gap year, but then I just didn't go back. But like I feel like yeah, it's not a path that people take. Um, did were people like really skeptical about it? Like as you were like talking about, this was the path,
Yeah, well, I was 17. It was in my senior year. I'd got into college and I decided to defer for a year.
right?
And my classmates weren't doing that. My guidance counselor, was amazing and helped me through the whole process, was like, "What are you doing?" My family was like, "Okay, girl, like thumbs up." And but I had a vision. Um, and it was one of those leap of faith moments where I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna try it. And I had a conversation with my cousin that really helped me. And he said, if you do it and you hate it, it's only a year and you'll get right back on track. And if you do it and you love it, you have a full year to just go hard and do as much as you can. And I
I love
think that
that.
really, I loved that. That just changed my perspective on life, honestly, which was like, do it, try it, see if it works, right? It's the same amount of time. It's just the way that you look at it, right? Which
Right.
is like, this isn't going well. It'll be over soon. Or this is going amazing. Wow, how lucky am I to have this
What do you think you learned the most through your gap year experience? Or like
time?
maybe even just like
Yeah.
set the scene. Like what did this year look like? Like you were on Capitol Hill, you were doing all these things in advocacy.
So I was on Capitol Hill. I was living at a DC university that I didn't attend. I was like just kind of living in the dorms. And I met some of my best friends that I'm still really, really close to this day. I learned that, you know, for me to have the life path I want, I have to just make it up. Like, it's not going to be the life path that I think I've been told exists and that I think a lot of other people are on. And I took this risk right at 17 and it paid dividends. And I think one of the main things that I learned from that is like, in order to do the things that you want, you're going to have to do the things that you've never done before.
You have to want it. You
That's
have
a
to have the
bar.
conviction. Yeah.
That's a bar.
Yeah.
But like, so true. I wanted to do this full time. I had to do something I'd never done before, which was like take a risk on myself, believe in a different life path, and give it a shot.
For sure. I'm going to transition just like a little bit here. So let's talk about like your main line of work now, youth and tech advocacy. So at Design It For Us, maybe just give some context on like the organization in general. Like how did it get started?
Cool. Yeah. So Design It For Us was started in 2023 by Zaman Qureshi and Emma Lemke. And these were two young people who basically saw, right, like there is a gap in terms of the advocacy around this issue. I joined the organization like I think 3 weeks after it was founded because I was like, yes. And we're an organization that's youth led, and we do advocacy around responsible technology. And we are the young people taking on big tech. And what this means is we are designing a better future of our digital world, both through policy and through advocacy. Right. So we're doing, social campaigns, and we're also, advocating for state and local and federal policy. Um, so we're talking about things like AI safety. We're talking about things like algorithms and the impact on our mental health. And so we're, a coalition of young people and of organizations in this space that are doing work around this issue.
What is like a recent win of the organization? Or I'm assuming like most of your advocacy work around this like kind of ties in with Dissent for us, but what's like
Mhm.
a most recent win around the space?
A recent win is that we recently started a podcast and a video series, which is called Tech Unfiltered. And it's me doing a direct to camera talking about the issues that young people feel and experience online, but don't always have a name for, right? So trying to get to the
Mm.
bottom of, why do I log on and why do I feel so bad, right? When I see other
Mm.
people hanging out without me, or, why am I so addicted to my phone? Why can't I get off my phone? So that's a really big one. So that's something that we're really excited about.
That's super exciting. And I'll link Tech Unfiltered in the show notes of this podcast. Really excited to be watching that and like learning alongside just like you and like building the community there. Cause I know that you have like also years of experience like talking about this. Let's also like chat a little bit about that. I know that you've built community on Instagram and other social platforms. What is like your own personal like community building around this topic looked like?
Yeah. So for me, it starts with a project that I made after my very close friend passed, which is called the Self Care Check In, and it is a story post that I do on Instagram almost every single day. And so I've been doing this almost every single day since like February 2020. And I ask, my community members, what is your anxiety level at? How did you sleep last night? And, it's through interactive polls, right? So maybe it's a slide, maybe it's a one or the other that people can click on. And the goal around this, right, is to disrupt the scroll, right? It's to have something
Mm.
to break up as people are just swiping through stories and letting folks know, like, hey, there's someone that really cares about how you're doing. And in this way, I've been able to make a community of people that know that, right? Like, I'm someone that's creating content that genuinely cares about other people, right? Like, I want to know how you're doing. I want to, give you a space to express, oh, like, I actually have been pretty anxious today. And the feedback that I've gotten from me is the most important thing, which is like, young people who are saying, like, I wasn't even thinking about my mental health today, or like, I did totally forget to, have a snack, drink some water, and so forming a community of people that actually care about, digital wellness, self-care without putting that much effort into it, right? Like one of the things that I like about it is that it allows people to do it pretty effortlessly. I'm creating it, I'm putting it out there. All people have to do is just do a habit that they're already doing.
Yeah,
And
they
I
just
think
interact
that,
with the story, you know, and like you're
right.
you're doing that throughout the day anyway. Speaking for most young people, but I mean, I love doing it honestly. Like I follow you and I do the self care check in when I can and when I see it in the story, and I don't know, it's just a nice way to like center yourself mid scroll, you know.
Yeah. So I'm so curious from your perspective, like, you're scrolling and it comes up. Like, what are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I also see it like usually first thing in the morning, so I'm like, I need coffee before I'm like really like in it. But like, I remember there has been like certain times where I'm like, whoa, I actually am feeling really anxious, and I didn't realize like I'm not even like paying attention to my emotions like as I'm going through this. Like, and I think like around times when the news is getting really heavy and the algorithm is just like shoving news and headlines and doom at me, it felt like really nice to just like center myself. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's just a nice reminder and it breaks up the rest of the stories.
I'm so glad to hear that. Like, that's totally the purpose. I think part of it for me is like I have this habit. It's so bad. I'm trying so hard to knock it. It's I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I look at my phone.
Same. I wish that I didn't. And like I wish I didn't look at stories like first thing in the morning. Like that's horrible. Like and I know that, but how do you stop it?
It's so hard. One of the things that I'm thinking about, right? Like my phone is so ubiquitous for so many tools in my life. So I'm trying to add different tools that my phone now doubles as. So I'm thinking about
Mm,
getting like an actual alarm clock, which like I don't even
I kind
like
of
it's
like
so
that.
wild to think about. And I was gonna say like I don't know if they make them anymore. Obviously they do, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like getting an alarm clock and having that wake me up instead, because then I feel like I can, I'll get up and then I'll like do what I need to do rather than just have the thing in front of me.
Right. Like I don't think that I could fully commit to like I've seen some people online like they'll get a flip phone again. I don't think that I'm that person, but I think the more that we can uncouple what it's great that a smartphone can do all of these things, but I think uncoupling it, I think could help with anxiety and just like overdependence on it and all of those things.
I think the idea of getting a flip phone would be so interesting. Like just to see like what happens. I mean, I work in this field and I know I'm addicted to my phone,
Right.
right? Like I know I'm addicted because it's so hard not to be. Like chemically,
Yeah.
right? Like the way the algorithm works, it gives you dopamine hits that are inconsistent, so you always want more. Like it's impossible not to be.
Yeah. Like I almost want to try it for 30 days. Well, because also, like, I can do a lot of my work personally, like on a laptop, which I feel like is less addicting. Like, you shut it when you're done, and it's
Mhm.
like, there's a million tabs, sure, but like, it doesn't have the same, like, dopamine, like, scroll effect. I'd almost want to try it for 30 days, but I don't know if I can commit.
I think I've been thinking about this for like a few weeks. Like I think I'm gonna choose like a month or like a set time and just like do it, like make a video about
Yeah,
it and
no, for sure.
just see what happens.
Let's transition just a little bit. When we think about the work at Design It For Us, what does impact actually look like? How do you measure it? I know that there's a bunch of like policy that you're looking to push, but are there other ways that you measure impact?
So when we think about advocacy, or when I think about advocacy, success is not always the bill that got passed.
Yeah.
Because there are a million things that happen in between knowing that a bill needs to pass and a bill actually being implemented. And so sometimes success does look like, passing a bill, getting the votes that we need. Um, I think for us, it looks like, the stories that we've heard, right? Which is that we are giving young people a space
Mm.
to talk about experiences that we once thought were unique to us, right? So we have a Slack community of young people, and we're talking about what we're feeling. We're looking at the news. We're doing the thinking. Um, and I've had young people message me and be like, I didn't know I wasn't the only one who felt this way. And that to me is impact.
What do you think like the biggest thing that you want to like advocate for right now? Like what's like on your mind as far as just like tech and advocacy? Like what's one of the top issues right now that you're thinking about?
Personally, right, not on behalf of any organization, I am most concerned about the relationship of tech oligarchs in our government. I
Mm.
think that it is very clear that there are massive, massive influences in terms of technology in our governance on every single level. And so, one of the things that I think we should be thinking about are antitrust laws, right? How can we work together to call out what we're seeing online, right? To notice the things that are becoming troublesome. So that's one of the things that's on my mind. Um, One of the things that's on my mind as co-chair of Design It For Us, we're working to pass bills around deepfakes, right? So these are
Mm.
non-consensual, explicit, intimate images that are usually AI generated, right? And these are used not as a First Amendment thing, but are genuinely forms of harassment that anyone on the internet now has the tools and the capability to do. And so, it's, right now perfectly legal to make a deep fake of someone of an intimate nature.
Which
And
is
we're saying that
crazy.
there should be civil recourse, which is like just logic. I
Duh,
mean, just
like
baseline
yeah.
logic.
I don't know if you've had this happen to you, but I feel like some people, when they know that like I use AI at work, will just like ask me straight up, like, is AI good or bad? Which I feel like is like such a like not it's just like not like the full picture here, because like I think that AI has like a lot of good places where we're going to be using it like just in society. Like I think about like all the like medical like advancements that will come with AI. And I know like in my line of work, just as like a writing assistant, like, things like just kind of stuff that like you would
Yeah.
normally like outsource. Like we use AI like all the time, but then I think about like deep fakes and it's like that also is coupled in with like all of this. Obviously there's more than just deep fakes that are like problematic with AI, but I think that there's just too much coupled right now to like have like a full grasp opinion of that.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like asking, is AI good or bad is like asking like if oranges are good or bad. Like,
Yeah,
there are middle grounds. It is not a, one or the other issue. Um, there are some things in AI that can be really effective. There are some things in AI that are really harmful. Just like anything else in the world, like, a massive sweeping blanket statement is not going to get us very far.
yeah,
Um, so you're right, right? Like, AI can, have amazing capabilities. It can also have pretty harmful ones. And so part of our, what I see my job as is to maximize the good, minimize the bad.
for sure. So tying it back to one of your original pieces of advice that you shared at the beginning, what is a moment that it really felt terrible in the moment, but eventually brought you like a good sense of clarity?
Yeah. I'd say definitely my junior year of college. I was really going through a rough patch. I think as any, young person can attest, there are ups and downs in our life. And I was, my junior year of college very much at a down. And I was like, I really need to be doing more advocacy in my community that exists, right? And so what I was thinking about was my college community. I was the president of the Residence Hall Association at the time,
Hmm.
which was an organization that, kind of oversees all of the residence halls and, like little hall councils. Um, and my friends were encouraging me to run for student body president. I was like, absolutely not. I'm too sad right now. I can't do it. I have no experience in, student government. I'm running against like six boys, like not gonna happen. And then the day that the ballot signatures were due, I was like, I think I actually really want this.
Hmm.
And so I went online and it says that the ballot signatures were due night to night. And so I get the whatever, like 500 signatures.
Oh
I
my
launched my
gosh.
campaign at like 2 p.m. and I get all my signatures by like 10:30 p.m. And I remember going home and making myself a pot of pasta. And my friend called me. He's like, "You're on the ballot for student body president." Like, I was at work for one day. What happened? I'm coming over. And so we sat on my kitchen floor and we ate pasta out of the pot. And I just had this moment of clarity and I was like, okay, like this is going to work. Like I believe in myself. I'm going to try to make this work as much as I can. Even if I don't get it, this is going to work because I care so much about it. And even if I'm, not elected or whatever, like I'm I'm going to still work on the issues that I care about. And I, did end up being elected and, did some amazing projects that I'm really proud about. But that was a moment of clarity, right? Which was like, I decided to run for student body president the day of, but I kind of had this like moment of quiet after one of the most hectic days of my life with a friend. And that was a really beautiful moment of clarity for me, which was like after anything hectic, like just taking a beat. And for me in that moment, success wasn't hinged on whether or not I was elected. Success was that I pulled myself out of something and I did something that I believed in.
Yeah. Also, just like taking a moment for 500 signatures in like several out, like, girl, like that's crazy. Like, I mean, it just
It
speaks
was
to you.
a lot of friends helping out. I texted everyone I had ever known in college, which was one of the funniest things I've ever done. But yeah, and like at the time, that felt like the scariest thing because for me, I was so afraid of failure, and that was a situation in which everyone around me would know if I failed. Right? Sometimes, like when we apply for things, when we go for things that we really care about, like we really care about the outcome. Sometimes our successes are shared and our failures are not, right? Like, I don't know all of the jobs, fellowships, applications my friends didn't get. I
Yeah.
know a lot about the ones that they did. And I think this was an example for me, which was like, if I don't get this, every single person in my life is going to know. Everyone's going to know about this
Yeah.
failure. And that was the scariest feeling in the world to me at that time. And I think we should be talking about our failures more because it happens to everyone and we don't talk about it. Like all the grants I didn't get, the jobs I didn't get, the things I wanted that didn't happen.
And this like also really connects to the work that you're doing within tech ethics, because it's when you think about Instagram or LinkedIn, I mean, LinkedIn, I guess, is another weird world, but I think about Instagram specifically, and it's just a highlight reel of someone's life, you know? And yeah, this was like a moment where, regardless, like people are going to know the outcome, whether it's like highlight reel or a failure. I mean, I think people are starting to get a little bit better, not on Instagram, I'd say, but on other platforms about sharing failures. But yeah, you like really put yourself out there. And
Yeah, like think about that, which is everyone you've ever known, both in college, but also in, you know, high school, your family knows that you're putting yourself out there and you're like at the whim of, 27,000 students and what other people think about you. Like it is literally just a question of like, do other people believe in the same things that you do? And that was really scary. It was like, like what if my school doesn't want the things that I do? Like that was another scary thought. I ran on a platform of, you know, reforming the student government, of, increasing mental health things. One of the things I'm most proudest of at my time at GW, right? We got a new LGBTQ plus mental health clinician, right? Like, we made GW's first ever Pride Day. We made GW's, first sports banquet, right? Like for club sports, right? Like all these things that I think our community really needed. But it's so scary to put yourself out there. Like, because failure feels so ubiquitous. And I'm really fortunate to have an amazing group of friends, right? And, if I failed, they would have still loved me and
yeah,
cared about me and supported me. But at the time, that's not what it felt like. It felt like this was like so scary.
daunting. Yeah, most definitely. Transitioning back just a little bit. So you've worked within policy for a while, to say the least. And you entered a lot of the spaces at a really young age. How did it feel for you to be like let into the room for these conversations?
Yeah, I think for me, I was never let into the room. I always had to fight my way in. So a lot of these conversations around policy sometimes happen in, pretty like highbrow rooms where, there
Mm.
are policy experts and policy analysts. And there were points where I was like, I'm a teenager and I really, really care about this. Let me in. And persistence allowed that to happen. Um, I think at points it can feel bizarre being a young person in some of these rooms, especially as I think about myself as a teenager, you know, 17, 18. I very much had a feeling of like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, right? Like, these are people been doing this for way longer than me, which was almost always followed by, but I have to be, right? Like, these are things I really care about. Like, I have to be in this room. I have to have this conversation. And approaching a lot of what I did with like, well, we need to talk about this. We need to have this conversation. And a lot of that kind of passion and determination, I think, has allowed me to be where I am now, which is just like a teenage girl that was really persistent in people's inboxes. Like, I wrote so many follow up emails. I reached out to hundreds of people. Like, for anything that I did, I widened my pool this much to get this many answers, to get this many conversations, to get this many yeses. Like, it was a funnel. And, now as I've grown older, sometimes you adjust the funnel smaller,
Yeah.
sometimes it's bigger, but a lot of determination.
Like at a certain point with some of these things, like it's a numbers game, right? Like you just have to like keep going, even though it sucks, like to be like, in the trenches sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if you have enough conviction towards something, you got to make it happen.
Yeah. And the term like it's a numbers game always messed me up because I'm not a math person. And I was like, well, why can't the numbers be the numbers that I want it to be? But just knowing like sometimes it is personal, sometimes it's not personal. Um, and knowing the difference between the two and like going full speed ahead regardless is huge.
Thinking about today, 2025,
Yeah.
it's an interesting time, um, to say the least. And I think many young people, similar to you, similar to me, feel really deeply frustrated about a lot of systemic issues. Regardless of what the issue is, what do you think the first steps to getting involved in advocacy or activism? What does it actually look like? How do you go from just like, I care about this to starting?
I think the first thing is what you actually just said, which is like feel it. Like feel the anxiety, feel the pressure, and then start vocalizing it. Start talking about it. The only thing that happens when we feel all of these things inside of ourselves and don't share it is we feel bad and other people feel alone. Neither of those things are things that we want. So as we're feeling anxious, angry, upset, feel it, start talking about it. Talk to your friends about it. Start having conversations with people, right? Like, rather than being on your phone in transit, like say hi to someone, ask, what they're thinking, how are you doing? Like, start forming relationships with people in your community. I think is the first thing. And then start socializing the issues that you care about, right? Like we see the end result of movements and what movements can accomplish. And we only see the end half. The
Hmm.
first half are all the conversations that people were having, all the, research that was being done, the communities that were being formed, the coalitions that came into being because of a few really cool people who really, really cared. So I would say as you start looking and maybe feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. Take a beat, feel what you're feeling, vocalize it, and start socializing it.
Yeah, it's as easy as just like we don't have to keep it all bottled in. Like just start getting it out there.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you say to someone that says, let's say tech ethics? It could be any topic, but tech ethics, for example. What would you say to someone that feels like this is just too big of a problem to solve right now, or like it's just too daunting?
All problems are made. Someone made it. There are people who benefit from you thinking like that, right? There are people who benefit from us thinking that these problems are too big to solve and they're not going to be solved within our lifetime. And, we should really just leave this to other people. That's why we're in this mess, is because people kept on thinking like that. I would very much say that not only is that not the right way to think about it, which is that, these problems are too big to solve, but actually start thinking about what we want instead, right? Which is not just rallying against something that we dislike, but rallying for something that we want. That I think is at the core of it.
Yeah, definitely. Like we can't just and I see Gen Z speaking about this more, but it's like we can't just keep pushing this off. We have to like this is the time
Yeah.
if like it's ever going to be the time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
With all of that, what keeps you hopeful like in times like this?
The people around me keep me hopeful. Just like, a quiet moment with a friend. I was with someone at lunch the other day. It was like a crazy work day. It was like meeting, 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 big thing happening. And we were talking, and I turned to him. I was like, would you mind if we just sat and ate in silence? I know this is like so weird for me to say, but like my brain is like a ball of mush right now. And he's like, that actually sounds really nice. And we just like sat and we just ate our lunch. And it was such a really sweet, delicate moment. And it's small moments like that where people don't have to be everything. We can just be one thing at a time, which is just, quiet moments with our friends, with people who we really care about. And that's what's going to build us up in order to have the energy that we need in order to tackle some of these big things, which can be tackled. It can be done. I believe it.
It can be. It all like all these topics though are really heavy. How do you create like personal space like in all of this? Like when you're in the day to day of like gun violence like earlier on and now like with tech ethics, how do you create like your personal space like within this?
It is something I'm still learning to do. One of the big things for me is like physical exercise. So I'm a nerd. I play ultimate frisbee.
I
For
love
any
that.
ultimate frisbee fans out there, love to you. Um, I play ultimate frisbee and I try to go to the gym as much as I can. Not only because physical exercise like helps me literally express what is happening
Yeah,
inside of me, but it's also my time that I'm not on my phone. So like I don't check my phone, I don't respond to anyone, and that's my like little bubble away. So just finding things that you really love and care about and people who you love and care about to do it with, I think has been huge.
for sure. I also find peace in like the gym
Yeah.
because like the one that I go to, like I have to like put my phone in like a little cubby. Like they don't allow it like on the floor. So it's
Oh,
like,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, I go to Orange Theory, which is like class
Yeah.
based. So it's like a little different, but it's like, I actually love that hour. Like, and it's far
Oh,
enough away and there's like a thick enough wall that like my watch can't even like hear
yeah.
my phone, you know? So I also find that's really nice. And also just like the science with like endorphins and like all the good feelings that come from like exercising.
Yeah. The other thing I do is when I'm having a really tough time and my schedule's really jam-packed, I will literally schedule in time to do nothing. So like, I'll have a meeting, I'll have, something else that I have to go to, a travel thing, 2 hour block, do nothing time. I can do whatever I want. If I feel like I have to work through it, I will. If I feel like I wanna, sit on my couch or do something else or take a break in the airport, literally scheduling in time to do it because Google Calendar rules my life. I love it. It helps me stay
Yeah,
organized, but also like having that time has been huge.
for sure. Also, pro tip for 9 to 5 folks, Google Calendar has a setting where you can schedule 25-minute meetings instead of 30 to give you that 5-minute break, which is super nice.
Love
Um,
that.
Actually, our last question. This has been like so fun.
This
And,
is awesome.
but one thing to wrap it up with, what's next for you? What's next for Arielle? Where do you want to go from here? Yeah, I'd love to hear just like what the future looks like.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. When I figure it out, I will let you know. I think next down the path is passing some bills that I really care about and advocating young people around issues that I really care about. That is as much information as I have for myself. So as soon as I figure out what's next, you'll be one of the first to know.
Love that. And I'm so excited for wherever you go from here. Thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything that you can like shamelessly plug right now for the viewers?
Oh, if you want to hear all of my yappings around digital wellness, mental health, you can follow me on Instagram at Arielle Geismar, first name, last name. That's my at around every platform.
Amazing. Arielle, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you
today.
so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you to this week's guest, Arielle Geismar, for being a part of this week's episode. You can learn more about Arielle's work at ariellegeismar.com, and you can learn more about her work at Design It For Us at designitforus.org. And thank you for listening to I Don't Know About You. I Don't Know About You was created, produced, and edited by me, Kyle Geismar, with music by Chris Samparisi. We release new episodes every Tuesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard, give us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us along on Instagram, TikTok, and I don't know about you.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.